The Macedonian army, especially under the command of Alexander the Great, was considered one of the best organized military forces of antiquity. The secret of its efficiency lay not only in discipline or advanced weapons, but also in a carefully structured hierarchy, which allowed every layer of soldiers and officers to work in perfect harmony to defeat their enemies. And in this video, we're going to see how that hierarchy was organized. At the top of this hierarchy was the king, called the basileus. He was the army's supreme commander and held total authority over all troops. Unlike leaders of later eras, who could command from a distance, the Macedonian king often led his troops personally in battle, mounted on his horse and making decisions in the heat of combat. This direct presence not only motivated the soldiers, but also demonstrated his courage and legitimacy as the highest leader. Despite his absolute power, the king did not command alone. He relied on a group of elite officers who formed his closest inner circle and helped coordinate the entire military force. These trusted officers were called the hetairoi, meaning companions. This group was second in command within the army's hierarchy and was made up of the Macedonian nobility, men of high social and military standing who served as generals and commanders of cavalry units. They were not merely the king's subordinates, but often childhood friends or close relatives, which created deep, direct loyalty to the supreme commander. Some famous examples of these companions include Hephaestion and Ptolemy, who played fundamental roles in Alexander's campaigns. They led troops in battle, took part in strategic planning, and ensured the king's orders were carried out with precision. This combination of personal trust and military competence made the companions key figures in the Macedonian hierarchy. Third in the hierarchy was the companion cavalry. This cavalry was the most feared unit in the Macedonian army. They were armed with long lances and protected by heavy armor, which made them both powerful and imposing on the field. During Alexander's reign, the companion cavalry was organized into 8 territorial squadrons, called elae. Each squadron had approximately 200 to 300 horsemen, allowing the Macedonian army to maintain a balance between strength, mobility, and strategic control of terrain. Initially, these squadrons were led by a single trusted commander, Philotas, an officer highly loyal to Alexander. After Philotas's execution, the cavalry's leadership was split between 2 commanders, ensuring the unit maintained its effectiveness and discipline. In numerical terms, it is estimated that Alexander had around 2,600 horsemen in the companion cavalry around 338 BC. In Alexander's strategy, the cavalry had a specific and decisive role. They functioned as the army's hammer. While the phalanx, the famous infantry line with long spears, held the enemy in place, acting as the anvil, the cavalry struck the flanks and rear. This combination shattered enemy morale and broke their formation, often determining victory in a matter of minutes. The effectiveness of the companion cavalry did not come only from brute force, but also from coordination and discipline. They needed to work in perfect sync with the phalanx and other units, seizing every opportunity created by the infantry to deliver decisive strikes. In fourth place was the Royal Foot Guard, called the Hypaspists. The Royal Foot Guard occupied a central and strategic role in the army of Alexander the Great. Unlike the massive, rigid Macedonian phalanx, the Hypaspists were lighter, more agile and highly trained soldiers, able to move quickly across the battlefield to respond to immediate needs. Originally, this unit functioned as the king's personal protection, ensuring his safety during confrontations, but over time its role evolved, becoming an indispensable force for the success of Alexander's military campaigns. The Hypaspists were extremely versatile. One of their main functions was to protect the flanks of the phalanx, where the dense, heavy formation of soldiers armed with long spears, sarissas, was more vulnerable. They also served as a link between heavy infantry and cavalry, ensuring that coordinated attacks between different types of troops were effective. In addition, the Hypaspists led direct assaults on fortresses and enemy positions. Their weapons and armor were inspired by traditional Greek hoplites, but adapted to provide mobility and protection, balancing the need for defense with speed of attack. Over time, the the Hypaspists ceased to be merely Alexander's personal bodyguards and became a fundamental part of the Macedonian army. During the campaigns that led to the conquest of the Persian Empire, they formed a unit of about 3,000 men, all highly loyal and disciplined, led by trusted officers. In fifth place were the Argyraspids. They represented one of the most prestigious elite units in the Macedonian army during the reign of Alexander the Great. Their name, meaning silver shields, reflected the distinctive feature they carried. Shields plated with silver, a symbol of honor, prestige, and military excellence. Originally, this unit was composed of Hypaspists. The change of name to Argyraspids occurred during Alexander's campaign in India, possibly to reflect the experience they had gained in conflicts in distant exotic territories. They were elite soldiers used in critical missions, such as protecting the Phalanx's flank, leading decisive attacks, carrying out ambushes, and serving as a strategic reserve in battles where the situation demanded immediate, effective intervention. Hierarchy of the Phalanx. In the army of Alexander the Great, the Macedonian Phalanx was considered the backbone of the military force. Without the Phalanx, neither the elite cavalry nor the royal guard could execute their maneuvers effectively. Within the Phalanx, there was an organized, strict hierarchy. Each regiment was subdivided into smaller units called dekas, which was a file of 16 men. At first, 8 files were combined, forming a group of 128 soldiers. This unit was called a taxis. Each taxis was commanded by an officer called a lochagos, a term in Greek meaning captain, and 2 taxis could be combined to create a new unit of 256 men called a syntagma. This structure allowed the Phalanx to operate in a coordinated and efficient way, even amid the chaos of battle. The lochagos relied on a team of assistant officers to pass on his instructions and coordinate the unit, maintaining cohesion even in critical moments of combat. One of these assistants was the lochagos Hyparetes, or the lochagos's aide. This soldier served as an intermediary between the commander and the rest of the unit, ensuring that orders were correctly transmitted and carried out. In addition, there were the salpingetes, the trumpeters, whose role was vital during battle. Using horns and trumpets, they transmitted sound signals to coordinate attacks, retreats, or changes in formation, allowing soldiers to react quickly without the need for direct verbal communication. Complementing this communication, the semaphoroi acted as visual signalers, using standards and flags to transmit instructions during marches and in battle. Finally, the stratokarus, or battle herald, had the role of shouting orders directly to the soldiers, reinforcing the lochagos's instructions and ensuring the information got through even in the noisiest, most confusing moments on the battlefield. Next in the phalanx hierarchy came the phalanx's common soldier, called the pegetairos. These men were highly trained and disciplined soldiers whose skill and obedience were essential to the success of Macedonian tactics. Each pegetairos carried a sarissa, an impressively long spear that could reach up to 6 meters in length. This weapon allowed them to keep enemies at a distance and create nearly impenetrable barriers of spear points. The front ranks of soldiers kept their sarissas pointed forward, facing the enemy directly. Meanwhile, the ranks behind angled their spears over the shoulders of the men in front, creating a continuous barrier of spear points that made any enemy advance extremely difficult. In the very last place in the hierarchy were the auxiliary troops. To function efficiently, the Macedonian army relied on a variety of auxiliary and support troops, each with specific roles that complemented the army's main strength. These units were essential for protecting flanks, initiating combat, and providing tactical flexibility on the battlefield. One of Alexander's auxiliary infantry forces were the peltasts. They came from the Thracian and Paeonian tribes, regions north of Macedonia, and were known as light, agile infantry, specializing in skirmishes and rapid attacks. The unit's name derived from the type of shield they used, called a pelta, a crescent-shaped wicker shield designed to provide mobility and minimal protection during fast fighting and flanking maneuvers. Alexander incorporated these peltasts because of their skill as skirmishers. Much of what we know about the organization and hierarchy of the Macedonian army comes from historical sources written by ancient authors who accompanied or studied Alexander's campaigns. Among the most reliable is Arrian, in his work Anabasis of Alexander, which describes in detail the structure of the army, the tactics, and the performance of the different units. In addition, Diodorus Siculus, in his Library of History, offers valuable accounts of troop composition and the way Alexander conducted his campaigns. So tell me in the comments what you thought of this complete list of the hierarchy of Alexander's army. Which of these positions did you not know yet? And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.